This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Good evening. It's late, it's loud. It's live on the Wednesday Late Late Show with your host, Toby Doncaster. And tonight, we look at motorcycling and teaching and learning. How do the three relate to each other? Stick with me and find out more.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Good evening and welcome to a rip-roaring show. I've been a biker for over 40 years, since the age of 12, and I went on my first motorcycle in Bangkok, in Thailand. A very simple process, if you like. I was put on a bike in a football field and told, here is the throttle, there's the front brake, there's the back brake, twist and go. No gears, it was an automatic. And, I rode around for half an hour. And my mother's friend just turned around and said to me, okay, you're good to go out on the road. So I went out on the road, and guess what? Within my first half hour, I had my first crash. Car pulled out in front of me. I didn't know what to do. My brain froze. And, that was the end of that. Since then, I've been a little bit more cautious. But, riding has always been in the blood. And 17 years ago, I became a motorcycle instructor. And the experience of being a motorcycle instructor was quite different from, learning to ride. I'm actually teaching people to ride. And it was quite an interesting experience. And over time, I had to learn how to instruct. But at the same time, I was also a teacher in further education. Tonight, I've got a guest who's going to be with us shortly, and she is also a motorcycle instructor, and we're going to be talking about how motorcycle instructing relates to teaching and learning in further education. And it's going to be quite an interesting conversation. So I do hope you join in. You can either send in messages or you can join us on the live chat. So, Max, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Yeah, very good, Toby. Thanks for inviting me along.
So, I know you as a motorcycle instructor and a previous DVSA examiner. Tell me a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I've been in teaching for about 20-something years, had various roles. Before getting into motorcycle instruction, I did actually work with excluded children in with musical groups, and
Wow.
that was quite interesting. Similar sort of age group that you're dealing with now, but it was a very, very good experience in tapping into kids who had no interest in academics but shone in other ways through the arts. So there used to be a facility in Camden that housed all forms of art for excluded kids, and I was quite fortunate to be part of that. So I guess that's where it started. Outside of that, I'm also a musician and myself, and yeah, the rest is history.
I mean, so what led you to become a motorcycle instructor?
Well, it started with a passion for bikes. I only ever kind of like do things that I love doing,
Yeah,
and I already had a passion for bikes, and having sort of like done engineering and music, I did that for a while, and realised that I didn't really want to be on tour all the time.
yeah, sure.
Ended up teaching a friend to ride, and he said, "Yeah, you'll be good at that. Why don't you give that a crack?" And here I am, 20 years later,
I know.
off the back of a friend. Yeah, um, and that's how it started, really.
My experience was similar but different. I'd been in further education, teaching students whose English weren't their first language. So I was teaching for about 10 years, and then I thought, what else could I turn my teaching hand to? And I thought, well, I like motorbikes. Why don't I go into doing that? And I found a place that would train me basically to become an instructor. And it it's a very I noted one thing about training young people. You it, when it comes to teaching in further education, um, they're a bit turned off with the academics, as you were pointing out just now. So 16 to 19-year-olds have to learn English and maths as part of the curriculum, but also they seem to have problems with vocational learning. So, they might be doing bricklaying or they might be doing mechanics, and it takes a year, to get them to sort of fit the mold, if you like, for learning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, it's like, well, you've got to turn up on time. You've got to turn up with the right kit. You've got to turn up with the right attitude. You can't sort of walk, you can't just storm out because something's difficult. You've got to be resilient. You've got to take responsibility for your own learning. That takes a year. And what I found with motorcycle instruction, that takes an hour. They either get with the program or they're just not going to progress any further. Do you find that as well, or do you find it different?
no, absolutely. I believe that I do. That has been my experience, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that these kids are not motivated by the subjects offered to them. So when you offer a 16 to 19-year-old freedom,
Mm.
a sense of freedom, they're going to grab that with both hands. It's adventurous, it's quite thrilling. The adrenaline, if they've never ridden before, having that, and they gain, social interaction from that. Um, Also, it's pretty cool, isn't it? It's quite a
Yeah.
cool image to have for a young person to be on a bike, and they're attracted to the image of motorcycles and symbols of like rebellion, adventure, which is why they're in that place in the first place. They haven't found their niche, and it's not just a thing of transportation. It's a skill that they can learn very quickly. They can develop very quickly at it, and that will give them the motivation to go even further
Yeah,
because it's not
definitely.
one of the subjects that have been pushed on them all of their life. It's something completely different.
Do you know what? I've just realized, when you were talking, I've realized something. No young person has ever been dragged kicking and screaming into a motorcycle training school and told, you will sit down and you will learn to ride a bike, by goodness. They're like,
Yeah, they're like
they come in
get
willingly,
me in
don't
there.
they?
Yeah, absolutely. And and this is it. It's like doing something where motorcycling really the biggest thing. I mean, I think for all bikers is the sense of freedom that you have. It's
Yeah,
unique. It offers a very unique sense of freedom and an independence that appeals to not just mature riders but young riders. And they can explore. It allows them to explore and travel without restriction, something which they've not really been able to do before.
mm,
Um,
mm.
So I think that's probably the biggest pull. Um, and when you look at the average curriculum, it doesn't really facilitate those who are not, academically minded. And I know that you say you've got sort of like, the trade skills,
That's right. Yeah.
but that's only because that's what we're used to giving people who are non-academic. If I'll give them a trade, they'll be all right. They're not interested
Mm,
in that either. They might be just
mm,
purely creative people who need a
mm.
creative outlet, and they need to find their thing. And I think as a society, if we don't look into that a lot more, because it's very much a one size fits all, isn't it?
That's right.
You
No,
know,
that
it,
is right. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we can't do one size fits all because then a lot of people get left behind. But when you take somebody who is creatively minded, and maybe they don't have the social background where they're used to kind of like you know socializing, the interaction um,
Mm, mm, mm.
element, whereas motorcycling gives people that. I'm sure you've seen it in class after class. Um, we can have people from various backgrounds that are just like you just wouldn't see them in the same restaurant, let alone in the same classroom.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
and, and motorcycling gives that to people, and young people especially.
Ah, you know what? You've just clicked on something else. You've just hit something else. It's the sense of community,
Mhm.
which, hmm, I was just thinking there's some bikers out there that call themselves outlaws, but it's quite interesting because, they they tend to go for the same bike, they wear the same clothes,
Mhm.
and it's like, yeah, I want to stand out, but I still want to fit in with another subgroup. What I found though, when I'm doing motorcycle training, like you were saying, we'll have 4 to 8 trainees on doing the sort of theoretical side of things, and like when I walk away and go and get a coffee or something, they've got their phones out. What bike are you looking to buy? What's your ride? What are you going to go for next? What
Yeah,
are you thinking of? And they interact with each other. I think,
absolutely.
and it's what you were saying about, not having those social skills or not being able to exercise those social skills and talk about something that they're interested in,
Yeah,
you
because
know.
what is offered to them is very limited. From their perspective, it's very limited. It's like you can't say to a pastry chef,
Mm.
you're on meats today. It's like no, I'm a pastry chef. We may work in the same kitchen, but it doesn't make sense. We have to look at what drives these kids and
Literally.
and yeah, give them opportunities where they will get that social interaction because by having that, um, so many things um, they'll be able to participate in with people that they wouldn't ordinarily hang out with. Um, I'm sure you've seen, like I said, you've seen in the classes where you could have people from so many, like various different backgrounds that these people may never, some of these kids may never even encounter. And
Yes,
some of the
definitely.
adults will never encounter kids like that.
That's
Even more
right.
to the
Yeah,
point,
yeah,
but
yeah,
they've all got
yeah.
one thing in common, and that is the motorcycle.
Mm, mm,
So whatever reason they're there for, it's not just about the kid. It's also about the adult who is now interacting on a social level that is well outside of their norm,
mm.
um, through motorcycling, and vice versa for the 16 to 19-year-olds as well. I think it's a really wonderful place to be.
It is. It is. What I was just thinking about though is, when they join in a sort of a training course, you know, it's almost like carrot and stick in a way, because the carrot is, okay, you're going to win this sense of freedom. You're going to get the adrenaline, you're going to get the rush, you're going to, you know, be able to explore. But on the other hand, you've got to listen to me, and I'm going to set boundaries and rules for you that you have to follow. I mean, every biker has to follow the highway code. You know, there's no way out of it. And when they train with me, if they don't follow the highway code, then it's time for me to say, look, I'm really sorry about this. Goodbye. Do you find that there is a resistance to the rules and boundaries? And how do you overcome that if you do?
In general, I don't think there is a resistance at all. I think they are coming there to win because they're doing something exciting, probably something more exciting that they've done for most of their lives, and they more often than not they come prepared. Um, they come with a certain amount of knowledge which will get them through.
Yes.
And if they don't get through, they're going to come back and they're going to make sure that they have it. They're coming to win, and it's really lovely because it's a really
Mm.
really good positive mental attitude to have. Whereas when they turn up to school or college, they're just whiling away the clock, um, and they don't really want to be there. I mean, if
No.
who wants to be in your class in a school or college or higher education facility. You know the students. When you're an experienced teacher, you know the people who want to be there and those who don't. And if you look at statistics on learning, it's really evident. So rather than waste time, we need to find out what it is that these kids actually like. Because if you see the drive, there is no
Mm.
resistance. If you see the drive that they have to
Mm.
actually get that certificate, and they've done that for themselves, you
That's
know,
right.
they've done it for themselves. Every aspect of it, all of those elements, they've done it for themselves. And if they get knocked back, they're going to be like, right, I'm going to come back. I'm not going to get knocked back a second time.
Yeah.
The ambition is there. And if that ambition was found for whatever it is that they do enjoy or could
You see,
enjoy,
this
it
is
would be really, really good. But I don't find any resistance whatsoever.
no. I was just thinking because you mentioned Education Institute, and I think even when you're 16 or 19, what happens is you, in a way, you've been conditioned at
Hmm.
school. You've this is it. This is day in, day out. This is what education means. And so when they come to further education, that's their expectation. It's going to be the same old, same old. There's going to be rules and regs. It's going to be boring. It's not going to be creative. When they come to do a motorcycle training course, you will be able to ride freely within a day.
Yeah.
You know, there's, I don't want to use the term short term gratification, but I suppose there's that element to it. You are going to win the prize by the end of the day. And
Yeah.
if you
And
don't,
then they come back the second time, making sure that they get it. And, you know, that commitment that they show, the commitment and drive that they show to want to get it, even if it seems like a, instant gratification or short-term gratification,
mm,
it
mm.
really is a long-term reward. Once that certificate is issued, it's a 2-year reward, isn't it? Really,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, definitely.
options, and then life, life has options, whereas they may not have had options prior to that.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
So yeah, we're talking about short-term gratification. We're talking about the reward of riding, the freedom and independence, and I would like because you mentioned if only we could, um, if only we could give that same opportunity to young people in education. So, what would you like to see in a vocational college or in further education, say?
I think a lot of research needs to be done. Um, you know, uh, growing up, they had sort of like YTS schemes and stuff like that, and it was much broader.
Mm, mm,
Um,
mm.
it was much broader, and then you had um, apprenticeships where kids could at least try something out, even if they weren't sure, they could try it out at least for a length of time and be educated along the way, and then decide actually this is for me or this is not for me. I think
Mm,
what
mm.
I personally would like to see is a little bit more research into children. I mean, I think they've got it spot on in like Norway. They've got it spot
Oh
on
yeah.
in Japan.
Oh.
Um, and they do. And when you look at like even in Japanese companies, in corporate companies, they hire specific signs. Believe it or not, they hire specific star signs for specific roles within corporate companies because
Okay.
they really understand where the individual strength lies within a person based
Mm,
upon
mm, mm.
certain characteristics of that person. We don't even go that far to even look at an individual. We're so generic in what we
Yeah.
offer in the one
Mm,
size fits all. It's not. It's no wonder that so many kids get left behind. You
mm,
know,
mm, mm.
and then you know, and then we think there's something wrong with them. And it's not the case at all. I think we did a
No.
lot more. If we did a lot more research and had specialists, I'm not saying that we don't have them. I'm just saying that we probably need more of them. Specialist subjects, specialist schools for specialist subjects, and have give kids the opportunity to discover themselves.
I'm running a project with 15 to 16-year-olds within further education. And the idea was that they could look at exploring other other ways of educating themselves, like where they were going to go next once they turned 16, but also other careers. And what I did as an introduction to the project, we had 30 learners in a classroom, and I brought in a lump of clay. And I said, today you're going to be doing clay sculpture. And I introduced the idea. I gave them a template to create a clay envelope. And I said, inside this envelope is a message that you're going to give to your future self. What would you give to your future self? Now, these 30 learners were disruptive. They found it very hard to concentrate on things. And I thought, this isn't going to work. I'm going to have clay up the walls in a minute. They produced the best artwork I'd seen. They sat in a classroom for 2 hours without toilet breaks, without anything, just working away at what they were doing, you know. And there was no prescription. I just said, look, here's a template. You're going to produce the envelope, but you could put any message. There's no right or wrong. It's what you want to say to your future self.
Mm.
And people were people. One girl, she did like a justice symbol. It was like an arm and a fist holding a pair of scales, and she said it represents justice. I want my future self to be a lawyer.
Right.
you know. And then
Yeah.
somebody else, did like a manuscript. Like when you get given your degree, that document is tied up with a ribbon. She actually carved out, the document with the ribbon,
Yeah.
and with a bunch of flowers next to it. And she said, this is what I imagine my graduation day is going to look like. Somebody's going to give me a bunch of flowers for completing my studies.
That's really
And,
beautiful.
and like somebody else, And this kid is like the most disruptive in his class, the most disruptive in his class. Sat down, he goes, "Oh, sir, can you give me that pencil sharpener?" I said, "What are you going to do with it?" He said, "Oh, I need the round shape." I said, "Okay." Gave it to him. He sat down, he made out a BMW logo, a car logo, stuck it on his envelope, stuck a couple more symbols. He said, "These are the cars that I want to drive in the future. I'm interested in becoming a mechanic." And I'm like, and then he finished his piece of work, and he turns around to his friend who's struggling to make an envelope. He says, "Look, let me help you." And he turned around and showed the other guy how to make the envelope, how to roll out the clay, how to do everything else. You mentioned that, creativity is key for young people to express themselves and to discover themselves, you know. And if it, I didn't have to say, "Oh, whatever you do, don't put clay on the don't put clay on the walls." You know, they did
Yeah,
it themselves. You know,
yeah,
they kept it clean, they kept it tidy, they tidied up after themselves. You know, there was
yeah.
no disruption, no nothing. I'd never seen anything like it.
All they need is an option or
Mm,
options.
mm,
And because, not everybody is the same. And, it's unfortunate that we live in a world which is the way that it is, and it only focuses on, the emphasis, it has a strong emphasis on higher education, uh, the world that we live in. And, you know, sometimes creative things don't fall into that. They can do if we nurture that creativity, but it's not always the case. We just need more research. We need to invest like much more in the
mm.
education system,
I think at the moment,
resources and stuff,
yeah, I mean, it's what you were saying about. It's almost like where the education system is designed to, mold people into a certain shape.
Yeah,
You know, each and every single person has to follow a certain pattern and come out in a certain way, and there's no variety. Um, I'm just thinking. I mean, like, if I find out for myself that, oh yeah, I'm interested in law, um, then I can follow that route. And there are certain people who do follow routes in education to become who they want to be. I mean, I left school at 16, and I was just glad to see the end of it. I couldn't stand being in school until I was motivated to travel to another country. And that's when I decided to train to become a teacher at 21. So, that's another 5 years, after leaving school.
yeah,
And I tried everything. I was a chef, I was a waiter, I was a salesman, I learned to make jewelry. I taught myself to make jewelry. But I never saw myself as a good learner. What if you were to, if you had a young person and you could see that they were struggling to make something of themselves, what sort of advice would you give them to help them sort of learn, if that makes sense? Could,
I, I guide my godson, who is now 21, and I have been doing so literally all of his life.
oh yeah,
Um, do I still have you there?
yeah, sure.
Okay. And I've always said to him, it doesn't matter what you choose to do. It just
Mm,
be your choice, not
mm,
somebody
mm.
else's choice. Because if you are living your life for someone else, you are not living.
That's true. No, you're not.
Whatever you decide, support you, which I do. If you change your mind, it's okay. If you get to the age of 30 and you still don't know what you're doing, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
otherwise you're going to succumb to peer pressure of a nation which doesn't have your best interest at heart at all.
No,
You'll end
no,
up
you're
becoming a
right.
number. So just
Yes.
find you within whatever it is that you choose to do. If you like it, do it again. If you don't like it, don't ever do it again. And then once you've done that once you've done that a fair amount, you'll make a decision as to what's for you. But if you don't try things out, you'll never know who you are.
Do you know what? I was just thinking, when we're relating that to motorcycling, which is what this topic, this is what we're talking about, motorcycling and the art of teaching and learning.
Yeah,
That is an adventure that they're about to take for themselves. You remember I said nobody's ever dragged kicking and screaming into a motorcycle school and told, sit down, you're going to learn to ride a motorbike or else. They do it by choice.
yeah,
And I think that is so crucial that people can see an end game to it. They can see what the end result's going to be, and they can see what it's worth. It's the
yeah.
opportunity to be able to go out and explore for yourself and be
Absolutely.
yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's the financial aspect of it as well, not just
Mm.
the freedom or learning, having learned a new skill or developing a new skill. There's the possibility that if you want it to turn it over into financial gain, it can do that for you if you wish. But the most important thing is that you're doing it because you've chosen to do it, and therefore you've made that commitment, you've stuck to that commitment, and I think that's a good thing.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
To Schools Week, Oak National Academy have announced the appointment of a new interim CEO. This comes as the online school sets a leaving date for its current boss, Matt Hood, now due to step down at the end of March. Director of Product and Engineering John Roberts is named as the temporary leader. Roberts was part of the team that launched the organisation 5 years ago. In the article, Roberts is quoted as saying, Oak has an important role to play going forward, supporting curriculum standards, tackling workload and innovating using AI. Matt Hood had acted as interim chief executive since Oak became an arm's-length public body in 2022. The recruitment process for Hood lasted a year, and the Department for Education confirmed his appointment to a permanent position in May 2024. Oak have stressed that Hood's permanent replacement will be selected following the principles of the public appointments process. Schools Week reported in November that a judicial review of the decision to turn the Oak National Academy into a government quango had been put on hold, due to concerns expressed by other groups that Oak would pose an existential risk to their sector. Oak published its last impact report in October, which said more than 1 in 3 teachers had used Oak resources between February and July last year. Almost 75% said its resources had saved them time over the same period. BBC Tees focuses on the issue of young carers being, in the words of a local head teacher, unfairly marked as late to school as a result of having to drop off siblings. 4 areas in the northeast of England, including Newcastle and Sunderland, have the highest rate of school absences in the country, according to the Northern Powerhouse Partnership. The head of a school in the region spoke to the BBC and said it was unfair to mark child carers as absent because they had responsibilities, such as helping a disabled parent to get out of bed. He went on to say that changes to attendance guidance had created an unfair system, meaning lateness after registers closed resulted in a U mark for an unauthorised absence for a morning session, even if the pupil was only half an hour late. The head teacher went on to say that the reality was that these pupils were at school most of the day. Analysis of the Department for Education figures by the Powerhouse found that the top 9 areas for unauthorised absence were in the north. Northern Powerhouse Partnership CEO said the figures were indicative of high levels of deprivation and an educational north-south divide. A spokesperson for the Department for Education said it had inherited an absence crisis, but was laser focused on tackling the problem. The Guardian covers a story about a secondary school head teacher who has obtained a court order to be paid damages in the settlement of a legal claim against abusive parents who he alleged launched a campaign of harassment against him. The head teacher was successful in his claim against the parents of 2 former pupils who he said had been harassing him since May 2023. The parents' alleged behaviour included starting an online petition to remove the head teacher from his role and establishing Facebook groups and Instagram accounts which encouraged online abuse against him. The couple were also accused of confronting the head teacher and the school's co-chair of governors outside their homes, although the couple denied this. The legal settlement was reached in January and the couple agreed to pay £10,000 in costs and damages, and agreed to multiple restraining and non-harassment orders. Full details of the story can be found online. Finally, the BBC West Midlands News website reports on a primary school who have begun training pupils in Year 5 and Year 6 to be mental health ambassadors. The school in Wolverhampton has begun teaching a programme to help children manage emotions following investment from West Midlands Violence Reduction Partnership. 20 pupils, including those with special educational needs, are being taught how to be upstanders so they can look out for younger children. Upstanders look out for those who might be being bullied and show that bullying is not okay. The upstanders wear high visibility blue jackets on the playground during break, and younger pupils can ask them for help. The scheme has had a positive impact on the school, says the report. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
And we're back. So, mental health. I think that's the biggest thing going at the moment, particularly after lockdown. Do you think motorcycling helps with mental health, Max?
Absolutely. I can bark for that myself.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, talk about a leading question. How? How?
I think it takes us back to the sense of freedom again, independence, and social interaction. I've met so many people. So if I start with kind of like the sense of freedom, because that really is what gets people into biking. And when you
Yes.
speak with bikers, they may own cars, but they'll only jump in that car when the weather is too bad to not be on that bike. You know, and it's always, you know, it's travel without restriction in terms of the sense of freedom. You can move around. You're not getting caught up in traffic because you can get around that. You know, you can get around so much. You know, so looking at that aspect, and then you've got the thrill, like I said before, the thrill and adventure. You've got the adrenaline rush, and I still feel that now. I've been riding for over 30 years.
Wow. Yeah.
I still feel that now. The social interaction. I go to bike meets, or I might meet somebody on the road who says, "Nice bike." You know, do you go down, and you start chit chatting with people, you know, at the traffic lights or whatever, and they might say, "Oh, do you go down to so and so?" Like, no, I've never even heard of that. Yeah, you should check it out, or whatever. And so you do. You don't get that in the car or any other vehicle. you know, if somebody stopped you in the car and said, "Yeah, nice car, you should hang out," you know, you wouldn't
No,
really have
totally.
anything nice to say. You'd probably call the police on them, you know. And you know, it's not just like I said, it's not just a transportation thing. I'm learning, I'm developing every single day that I get on that bike. I never think that I know everything.
And that's,
And it's
yeah.
and it's an escape from routine.
Yeah. You mentioned I'm learning something new on a motorcycle. In your experience, how many young riders go from, their initial CBT to taking test to then going on to becoming advanced riders?
I would say that when they hit the 19, it's very few, very, very few. I would say like maybe, I can't give a statistic, but I can only give a
Sure.
statistic in my personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe 1 in every 1,000 at 16 years old. At 17-year-olds, probably half that will go on to take a
Mm-hmm.
test.
Mm-hmm.
When they get to 19, however, that's when they will start taking the test, because they now have experience behind them, and they now have in front of them a much more powerful bike that they're allowed to ride if they go through the test. And because they've had that experience, they realise that actually, I think I'm ready for something bigger now.
Yeah,
You know, and
exactly.
yeah, and they're much wiser as people. They've got much more road experience. They've got more self-preservation,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and they have become part of a community which they understand and like. So I'd say when they get to 19 years old, I'd say probably 1 in every 50. It's a massive,
Mm,
massive jump.
yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
And I mean, you've mentioned there's always a benefit. It's really strange, about motorcycling. There's always a benefit to continual development and continual learning. I remember, just last week I was training a couple of people, and they kept staying in one lane, and I said, "Look, guys, look to your right, look up ahead. You can see that there's no traffic on the right-hand lane. Why aren't you making progress?" And they were like, "Oh, you know, it had never occurred to them to sort of move on and get a move on and get on with it." Um, so and they'd been riding for a year, a couple of years, and they hadn't picked up on this sort of maneuver, if you like. Or it could be that they were afraid that they would fail me by going into the right lane or learning how to overtake. But it's like, well, we've just talked about it. I've just demonstrated it to you, and now I have to remind you to make progress and to develop yourself. And I think it, if we could apply that same philosophy in education itself, that education shouldn't ever stop. There's always ways of making progress and developing yourself. um, I think that would reduce mental illness, because you've got this self-motivation drive.
yeah.
It'd be interesting to find out whether bikers are actually happier people for being on a bike. What do you think?
I think that I think with bikers in general, they're always happy being on a bike.
Mm,
It's not something that you would do just because it's there. It really is a choice, you know.
mm, mm.
Um, and it's like you said, you never dragged somebody onto a course. It's like people going to university. You know that as a university student, you're going to be owing some serious money after you finished for a very long period of time.
Mm.
And there will be those who just think, well, for the job that I want to do, I need to go because otherwise I'm not going to be able to compete. So I'm going to take that one on the chin. and I'm going to do it anyway.
Mm,
And then you've got the
mm.
others who are like, I'd really like to go to university for the experience, but there's no way I'm going to sink myself into all that debt. I'm going to work first, get the money together, and then I'm going to go and lessen the blow.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? At the end of the day, it's a choice. People choose to go to university. People don't choose to go to school. They have to go
Yeah.
to school. And
Yeah.
just like with biking, I think everybody who wants to be on a bike is on that bike because they are choosing to be on it and they're having a great old time.
I'm just wondering, how would I crack that nut, of how would I bottle that drive and motivation and pour it into, the college where I work? How could I make learning that sort of motivating? Because we've tried, we point out to learners in the college, say, as a mechanic, you could be earning 40 to 50K. There's a carpenter, a student doing carpentry, and he likes to talk about his uncle, who's a roofer, self-employed roofer, runs his own business, owns a Lamborghini, a couple of Land Rovers. He talks about it. He's not boasting. He's just saying, look, the guy's making good money doing the job. But it's almost like they don't a very small number will go for the pain in order to make the gain.
Yeah. I think that overall, it's not, I mean, I'm all for, at an individual level as a teacher, at an individual level to do what you can. But I think it requires a real multifaceted approach for the whole education system.
Right.
To provide, alternative education options for individuals that are may not thrive in traditional academic or vocational settings. And I think that, some of the things that we could look at are like developing flexible learning pathways, just creating educational models that allow for a personalized learning experience, so it caters. And this is what I mean, we need to do the research so that it can cater to the diverse interests that people may have. I mean, at the end of the day, a society is a society and we will all fit in somewhere. It's just that the education system doesn't allow for that. So I think if we could include maybe, I don't know, project-based learning. So if you said somebody who was like 16 years old, if you do your CBT and take your test now, by the time you get to 17, take your test again for the 125. When you get to 19, take that test. And, they'll have held a license for like literally 3 years.
Yeah.
By the time they're 19 years old. I mean, that's a skill in itself and requires commitment and dedication. And you said to them, if you could ride a bike for a living and teach people what you have just learned because you've had such a great time, would you consider that a career option? And we have a lot of students who once they've passed their test, young people, they come back and they say, how do I become a motorcycle instructor? It's like the first thing you need to do is get your license and make sure you've got that license kept clean for 3 years. If you come back in 2 years, it'll take us about a year to train you. So by the time you've gone through the training, at 3 years, you will now be qualified. Do you see what I mean? This is this is the kind of salary that you earn. This is what your job role is like because you've seen it firsthand of how your instructors have been with you and what happens on a site. Would you be interested in that? And we get a lot of people who would be interested in that. You get people who may not want to ride the bike, but might be interested in running or managing a school and thinking, do you know something? I could do this. Do you see what I mean? And that could happen with so many different types of what's the word I'm looking for? Projects, you know,
Yeah,
where
sure.
they've got self-directed learning, you know,
I
just
think what you're trying
experiential education.
experiential education. Yeah, and it is, it's multifaceted. You can see there's different things that you could be doing, you could be applying yourself for. Um, and you're right, I don't know. I mean, I've been an instructor now for 17 years, and I still learn. I think this is what captures me anyway. I still learn something new, you know, every time I run a training course. I still learn something new, as you were saying, when I'm out on the road having a ride, you know, um, whether it's learning about road surfaces, how to accelerate, how to corner, how to go out in the countryside. Um, I did the an advanced training course, and the examiner was a police officer. So he comes down, takes me out for my test, and we come back, and he goes, Toby, you're doing really well with the town riding, the urban riding, safe, good positioning, good progress. When you're out in the country, you're boring as heck. you know, you just play it too safe. You've got to loosen up a bit. You've got to, give it some. He still passed me because I was a safe rider. So I
Yeah,
ticked that box, but
yeah,
he wanted to stretch his he's on a 1,000 cc motorcycle. He wanted to stretch his legs, and
yeah.
I didn't give him the opportunity.
Good man.
But it's funny, isn't it? I
Yeah,
mean, motorcycling, you're riding within the boundaries, you're trying to be safe, but at the same time you're allowed that sense of creativity, within the highway code, and within the boundaries of the limitations of your motorcycle, the tires, the road, and everything else. There's
yeah.
there's something there. And
There's a lot. There's a lot to take into account, and this is what I mean. It is a commitment, and I think any 16 to 19-year-old embarking on that journey, it is a commitment, even if it's just for one day. But it will never be just that one day, because we see them return every
yes,
2 years, and then
yes.
at some point they're like, right, do you know something? I'm 19 now. I want to do my test, and I want to get a bigger bike. I want to commute to college. I want to, commute to work. It's a lot cheaper than London transport, and to be
Mm,
honest, I
mm,
really
mm.
enjoy my bike. I want my insurance to go down. So there's thinking responsibly. There's a lot. It is a commitment at the end of the day, and it's a shame that we don't have stuff like personalized learning experiences or community-based programs. They have to go on courses and pay for courses. But if we had community-based programs or workshops, mentorship programs for bike schools,
Mm,
it
mm,
would
mm.
be really good. I mean, that's just one of the things. Like I said, this is for people who are young kids who we talked about, who are not really academia is not their thing, or vocational is not their thing. So
Yeah.
they must be creatives. You know, if you're not a vocational person, you're not an academic person, you must be a creative. And unfortunately, the way that
Mm,
it is in Britain is that creativity is really, and I know this because I did actually delve into this on my masters when
hmm
I when I talk about how the music industry is already sewn up, and it's mostly the kids of quite well off parents or private school kids who are pushed into the creative arena.
mm, mm.
It's always those kids, and once in a while, you have like an urban artist that breaks through, and that's because the urban kids are creating an entirely new genre of music that you cannot even think of giving that or saying that it's invented by public school kids, because it's not. It's from the streets.
Yeah, right.
So they have to pay attention. But unfortunately, the way that it is in sort of like music industry, the arts, all of the creative industries, it really is like that. It's mostly come from private school kids. They've got it handed to them on the plate, which unfortunately leaves a lot of kids out.
Well, I think it does at the moment, but as you were saying, as we've discussed, motorcycling can build a young person's sense of drive, their motivation. It can give them an income. It can allow them to pursue further development. Once they see it as further development, I think if you sort of calcify, if you stay in one position and say, well, this is where I am now, and I'm happy to be, well, let's say a motorcycle courier, for example, or I'm happy to just stay in one place, and they don't see that there's an opportunity for them to develop, then they won't go for the future carrots, if you like.
Absolutely, and this is why I say if they had like mentorships and
Yeah.
community-based programs where kids can come along and learn to ride and see the opportunities surrounding what they've just done for the day, apprenticeships, internships. They don't offer that anywhere within the motorcycle community. It's down to the schools, to offer that to people who come back and say, I'd like to do this. What do I need to do? So for me personally, we've had, quite a high turnover of students becoming instructors, or at least doing the training course. And, hopefully they've gone on to, maybe open their own school or work for somebody else. Some of them we've got ourselves. But, it needs to be a life skill,
Yes.
And it really is a life skill. And to incorporate the life skill, such as that, into a curriculum of personalized, learning experiences.
I
Why
think,
not?
I think you've knocked the nail on the head there. Is that we attract people to come and learn to ride for a sense of freedom, but then what they develop is a sense of purpose, and it in the ideal world we would be able to nurture that even further so that they could develop themselves even further. We've touched on that motorcycling is a sort of it's, as you said, it's a life skill. It's not just a one-off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at places like America and France, Italy, and you look at like waiters and bar staff, it's a life skill, and it's a recognized skill.
Yes,
And it's
definitely.
not just like how we see it over here. It's like some transient job while you're going to uni. It's a real job with real perks, with real style and real money, with real prospects, and everything else that comes with it. We don't recognise certain things here, which is a real shame, because people could really elevate themselves in industries that we've always either looked down upon or not even looked at. And I think that.
Well, I think this is, just what you're saying. We're stuck in a system where, if you get your hands dirty, then you're doing a menial job. You're not doing something that's praiseworthy, if you like. You can't do something for the joy of it, for the fun of it. I think this is why motorcycle riders are seen as rebels, because we do go out there and we do stray away from the norm, and we do get our hands dirty, and
And
we
we
do
don't
have
need
fun.
and we don't need praise.
No, no.
It's a mindset. You know, we're not that needy.
No.
And teaching our kids that that something is menial is really quite terrible.
Yes, I
I've
agree.
travelled quite extensively and seen how some people live on the other side of the world and stuff like that, and I just think they have no choice but to live that way, which is an iota of the I don't know. I don't like to use the word wealth,
Yeah, sure.
but
Yeah.
do you know what I mean?
Most people live without the wealth that we have in this country.
Yeah,
And
the,
the opportunities that we have in this country is what I
yeah.
is you know,
And an
wow.
opportunity is an opportunity, and we should not encourage our kids to think that certain jobs are whatever. Because when we go traveling after uni for a year, or like what you did, you went traveling. We all do those jobs, and we had fun doing those jobs. We discovered ourselves. We learned new languages. That's not menial.
No, not at all.
I mean,
No.
you can take the colonial kind of vibe and that way of thinking, and hope to keep instilling that in the youth, and tell them that they're nothing if they can't be outside of that. But then
Yeah.
you'll never have a successful nation, because if nobody wants to do certain things because it's deemed as menial, but yet we will go abroad when we go traveling and we'll do those jobs and have a great time doing it, but we won't come back here in our own country and do it. I mean, there's something wrong right there, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a profession everywhere else but here. I mean, we need to change the mindset. There are always going to be people who have the colonial mindset, and you know something, that's for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah,
But it
right.
doesn't mean that we have to teach that to all of our children all of the time.
No.
No wonder they feel like they can't succeed.
So anyway, we started off with freedom and purpose, and we ended up with, a bit of philosophy about what young people could be looking for in the future. And I think we both agree, doing anything really to earn something in order to, learn and develop yourself is a praiseworthy thing. Max, it's been a great conversation.
It has.
Uh, I don't know. I don't know if we answered the question. What does motorcycling have to do with teaching and learning? But
Sorry, what was the question?
what does motorcycling have to do with teaching and learning? But I think we answered it quite well uh, through our hour-long ride.
Wow, has it been an hour already? Well,
Yeah, right.
I've had a good time.
All right, Max. Rubber side down. I'll see you soon.
See you soon. Thanks very much, Toby.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.